All right, everybody, welcome back to the best hour of the day. Fern here, and I am, if this podcast turns into a rant about LSU football and SEC and the greatest college football team of all time, you're just gonna have to deal with it. I've got a friend on here, Geoff Westmoreland, who, if you've not listened to the episode about rent is due, when we said, hey, we'd like to talk to a lawyer, Geoff, oddly enough, reached out to us, and he's got some really cool stuff that we're going to talk about. He's going to shed some light on some of the topics we covered there, but talk to them from an authoritative standpoint, and then talk about something that is really, really cool here, which is CFLAG, which is the CrossFit Legal Action Group, which we will get into later. But first and foremost, I know you deal in real estate law, so I'm sure you're busy at this point, so thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Glad to be here and glad to help out, especially anything we can do with the affiliates.
This is something that is obviously just top of the priority list for a lot of people, and we got a lot of feedback off that episode. And I don't claim to be an expert. I also need to put out the caveat there that we are not giving legal advice to anybody. You should get a lawyer and talk to that about your specific scenario. But I did want to have somebody who is a lawyer, but specifically somebody who deals with this specific scenario, come on and talk about it so that we could shed some light on it. So real quick, Geoff, kind of give everybody a little bit of your background so that we can kind of have some context about like why people should listen to this right now.
Absolutely. So I've been practicing law for 23 years, started as a litigator, and then eventually got into transactions in my market, which is North Louisiana. It helps to be able to do both litigation and some transactional work. My practice is generally business law, business litigation, and real estate. And that involves a lot of commercial real estate. I represent almost exclusively commercial landlords, write a lot of commercial leases. And so affiliate leases fall right into that category. You may be renting a warehouse as a box, or you might be in a strip mall, but you're renting from a commercial landlord and you're on a commercial lease. And so that is a lot of what I do. And what's been interesting in the last month is I've had more than a dozen conversations with my clients on the flip side of what you spoke about in rent is due. They're calling me saying tenant XYZ is asking for 3 or 4 months of waived rent. A, what do I have to do legally? And B, what should I do? And let's talk about strategy where I want to help this tenant. But some of these landlords are pretty small shops themselves and just simply cannot give up that kind of money. So I've been dealing with that on the landlord side for the last month. Also, just a note, I've been doing CrossFit 6 years. I do have my L1.
Nice.
I love CrossFit. It has become my life, but also the affiliates. I have a heart for the affiliates and what they're doing. And that's how CFLAG got started, which we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
But I'm always looking out for the affiliates to protect the affiliates because I know that is truly the definition of small business in most cases. One owner doing the best that owner can to turn a profit and to change people's lives. So the work that's done in the box, I completely believe in it.
That's super. What affiliate do you go to an affiliate?
Yes. So I'm at CrossFit SBC in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Shout out. The great state.
And great to have you from Baton Rouge. And then we also have operating inside that affiliate, CrossFit Medicus One, which is the first CrossFit Health affiliate ever started. Started at the direction of Greg Glassman by Tom Siskron and Ken Sanders, both physicians.
That's right. I didn't realize that was okay. Okay. Now this all makes sense because they were on the CrossFit podcast with Sevon a while back.
Correct.
And then, so we'll kind of put a little foreshadowing here. So the CFLAG, which is the CrossFit Legal Action Group, is, for anybody's like, what the hell is that? Like, how is this important to me? It's very much akin to the CDC, or excuse, not the CDC, the DDC, the Derelict Doctors Club. And so when they're doing that, when HQ is dealing with these doctors trying to create this grassroots movement, they're also doing it on the legal side with attorneys trying to create resources for affiliates. So we'll get into that later, but that's what that is. You need to know about that. It will be a very useful resource to most people moving forward. So I do have a couple of questions, and so obviously we'll get to like all the stuff that we covered there, but I think it's important because you represent the other side of this equation. And that is important because as somebody who is a tenant, when you're having these conversations, it is very useful, and this is in any negotiation, it is very useful to understand what the other side wants and needs if you're going to have a reasonable negotiation. Otherwise, you're just going to go ask for ridiculous stuff because you're ignorant. So that's why I think this is even more beneficial, is because you are actually largely representing in your day job the other side of this equation, which means you can give some insight into things that affiliate owners should be thinking about moving forward when they either sign a new lease or looking to sign their first lease. So first and foremost, we'll just go general stuff and then we'll get into more specifics. Like, what are some things an affiliate owner should be considering when signing a lease? So let's just go ground floor stuff here first.
Well, what's interesting is that up until now, nobody thought about these scenarios. A lot of times there are no force majeure clauses, act of God clauses in leases because landlords don't want them. And so, something that's very time sensitive now is if you're going to sign a lease, and we know that COVID is around, we know it's not going away, and we know it's probably going to come back again next year to some degree, next flu season. So this isn't the last we've heard of COVID. Of this COVID, not to mention anything else that comes around. We've had SARS, we've had
MERS, H1N1.
Yeah. So, that's something that we need to be thinking about, is trying to get some sort of force majeure, and also maybe a force majeure that's not just broad in general, that says something along the lines of, if I have to shut down because of a government order, a governor's order, a municipality order, then the following things are going to happen, to try to get specific.
So on that note, before we go too far, because I think this is important, like I covered it, but I probably did a horrible job of explaining what a force majeure is. Can you tell people what that is and why that is specifically relevant right now?
Right. So what it is and the people call it an act of God. It is an act of God clause. It is an activity that occurs that no one has any control over. A perfect example around here, because we're east of Dallas and we're kind of in Tornado Alley sometimes. Tornado is a perfect example. Tornado comes along, blows the roof off of your structure. You cannot operate your affiliate, and a force majeure clause would allow you to stop paying rent or pay half rent or a third rent or something of that nature. Landlords don't love them because, it gives the tenant an out. The thing you've got to realize is the bigger your landlord, the stronger they are, the more landlord friendly the lease is going to be from the very beginning. And so a force majeure clause allows you to either, defer rent, get partial rent, if your structure or your business can't operate. And some of those force majeure clauses say things like war, famine, different things like that. So, now we would want to get more specific. I mean, pandemic, okay, but I would rather say, if there's a government order of some sort, because we could argue all day about, is this next thing a pandemic or not? But if my lease says, if I have to shut down because of a government order, then I get X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So that's going to be important going forward.
Which mine actually does say that, oddly enough. And I was just like, oh, wow. Like I probably read it and like didn't know what it meant, or just assumed that would never happen. But here we are. So I'm just like, all right, well, thank God. But okay. So something to look at moving forward. Now, I know you said you listened to that podcast. So where do you think is the best place to start unpacking some of these instances, or what do you think would be useful for affiliates to know when they're having these conversations with their landlords? I know I've found out a tremendous amount of information about like how landlords are leveraged from lenders and some of these other things that are going on throughout this process. So I'm far more educated about it than I ever would have been absent of this scenario.
Right. So that's a good example. Some of these landlords cannot make rent concessions unless they're approved by their lender. So it just depends on what's going on. I think one of the biggest issues right now is, again, just as you said earlier, Jason, this isn't legal advice. Every legal situation turns on the specific facts and the specific law applicable in your area. But generally, in Louisiana, I tell them, my clients, there is no law right now on the books, whether state, local, or federal, that says in a commercial lease setting that you have to give your tenant anything. Not in Louisiana. You don't have to give them free rent. You don't have to give them deferred rent. But of course, everybody recognizes we're all struggling. Everybody's struggling. A double whammy of what's occurring here, and I don't know if you know, but because of the oil prices, North Louisiana, Northwest Louisiana, East Texas are getting decimated.
Crushed.
I heard a stat the other day, 300,000 jobs lost in the Houston area alone in the oil and gas industry.
Just in Houston. I mean, like I was looking at the stats either last night or this morning. 500,000 people in Virginia have filed for unemployment since this started. I mean, it's bad.
So for our area, it's a double whammy. We've got COVID and we've got the oil issue. So I tell my clients initially, there's no requirement that you do anything, but you want to keep a good relationship with your tenant. You want them to renew. When the renewal comes up, you don't want them to just bail and make you chase them for the money later. We've had all those conversations. So one of the things I would tell tenants, affiliates to do is come at it with a reasonable approach. Now, some people say, okay, well, when you negotiate, you come with your highest offer, they come with your lowest offer, and you meet in the middle. It's hard to just go to a landlord and say, I need 3 months free rent or 4 months free rent. I think you're a lot better off saying, I'm struggling. Let's have a conversation about this and try to find something that works. Because free rent is just, quite honestly, I've been practicing 23 years and I haven't been around as long as a lot of people who've gone through World War II and the Depression. But the concept of just waiving rent has never occurred in my legal practice ever.
Yeah,
it's never come up.
So I would agree. And this is something, I don't even know where this concept started. Number one, I did not ask my landlord for free rent. And anybody who does that, I just think it's a really crappy ask, number one. So you're probably starting off the conversation on the wrong foot. There's a couple different things. You could propose half rent, or at the bare minimum, my conversation was, I have full intention of renewing this lease. What I'm asking for is not free rent. Can you take that rent and roll it to the end of the terms of the lease? Like I want to make you whole for the terms that we agreed upon. I'm probably just going to need a little gap here because of things that are unfolding. Now, I do know some things about my landlord because we've been here 8 years. I know that he owns the building outright. So I know he has some wiggle room. I know that some of the other tenants here are on government contracts. So they are unaffected with regard to their revenue stream. So again, knowing what's going on with the landlord, having a good relationship with them helps. But I definitely would not have gone to him and just say, waive my rent. Because I'm the largest tenant in the building. Like that, I know what that dollar figure is to him. Like it's not chump change, So I think you should really look at it and figure out how you're going to ask for it. And he was just like, yeah, we'll figure it out, man. I've been here 8 years. Like I owe him a lot of money over the next 30 months. If I go bankrupt, he loses way more than 1 to 2 months rent.
Right. Well, and I would dare say that, and this is an assumption, but I would go out on a limb and say, when you're talking about affiliates, especially in the United States, most of your landlords are not these huge corporate entities, okay? So you can have a person-to-person discussion with your landlord because you're usually, like we say, you're renting a warehouse of some sort of box, or what would normally be a small commercial venue. So you can have those conversations like you did with your landlord and say, look, let's find something that works for both of us. And I had this very conversation yesterday with a landlord who owns quite a bit of real estate around our area, but each building is a separate entity with its own books.
Yep.
And he was talking to an international company who came out of the gate and said, we want 3 months of free rent. Well, they're an international, he's dealing with a guy out of London. And I told him, I used this word, and I said, really, just like you said, a crappy ass. I said, that's offensive, really, because you're an international company and I'm this little guy in Northwest Louisiana and you want 3 months free rent. It's not a great way to start the negotiation. So what I would suggest to boxes is do exactly what you did. Try to have a person-to-person conversation, and and then chop it up. Chop up the pie however you want. Some free, some waived rent, some deferred rent, some amortized rent, whatever works. I mean, one of the things I talked about with this client yesterday was, okay, give them a month free rent. That second month, amortize it over the next 12 months, starting in, say, July 1. So you get some of that money back sooner rather than later. And then add a month at the end of the term. Something where we're kind of all getting what we need.
Yeah.
I'm getting a break. You're getting your money. I'm not asking for just a full-on freebie. I really think that is important when you're talking to your landlord.
So I have the space that we're in, and then I have another space that I sublet to another tenant in a big shopping mall. And the landlord there is it's a large company. So it's like $1 billion real estate company. And their proposal to me was like, hey, we'll take your deposit. I was like, you can't do that. It's an escrow. And no, you can't do that. And then we'll defer 3 months rent. But then what you're going to do is we're going to take that 3 months rent, and then we're going to amortize it over 6 months. To which, at this point, I'm bringing my lawyer in. I'm like, that's unsustainable. That's a 50% increase in my rent over a 6-month period when the bottom is falling out of all of the market. I was like, I'm willing to make you guys whole, but this time frame that you've proposed is unrealistic. Like, what you're going to do is end up getting nothing because this is going to explode. Like, that's just not doable. So I proposed something that I thought was reasonable, and then they came back with something that I thought was completely unreasonable. I'm like, that is a lot of money, like, just straight out of the gate. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but my landlord here was just like, yeah, we'll figure it out, man. Like, now I have a personal relationship with him. I can text him and say, hey, can we talk? So that's the difference there,
Something that to go back to where we started on this, where you were saying, what are some things that affiliates need to do in these lease situations? And I tell clients this all the time. You can spend a little bit of money with me now, or you can spend a lot of money with me when the thing blows up and you either get in litigation or almost get in litigation. I don't think anybody ought to sign a commercial lease without at least having a lawyer go through it. And what you can do, if you find a reasonable lawyer, not some lawyer, and I don't want to miscategorize things, but not some lawyer in a big firm that they only have big clients and they only want to send out big bills. And that's not a stereotype of all lawyers. But the point is, if you can find a lawyer and you call them and say, look, I just want you to read through this and I want you to tell me what the big issues are, the gotchas. I don't want you to redline and rewrite this thing. I'm a small affiliate owner. I want some eyes on this. I want you to tell me where I need to change my negotiation. I think, if you spend a little time looking for a lawyer, you will find somebody who will do that and won't rewrite the whole thing and send you a bill for $1,500.
Yeah.
And so get a lawyer on the front end and spend, $400, $500, $600 to look at your lease versus, here's a perfect example, the COVID deal. Now, I'm trying to enforce a force majeure clause and my landlord's saying, forget it. Well, you're going to spend a lot more than $400, $500, $600 just having a dispute in letters between lawyers, much less if you get into a litigation scenario.
Yeah. it's an interesting scenario because one of the things that's unfolded now is like, so if I was to list me personally, top 10 mistakes, biggest mistakes made as an affiliate owner personally, not getting a lawyer from day one. And I don't mean have somebody on retainer, just having a lawyer that I have designated as my legal counsel in the event something happens or I need somebody to look over some documents would be top five, would
Right.
be top five. And the reason for that is everybody's trying to bootstrap it when they start an affiliate. Knowing what I know now, obviously, that is not one of the things that you should bootstrap, kind of like an accountant. Like, you do not want to bootstrap. Like you said, you're going to save far more over the long haul than you would have when you're trying to get somebody to clean up a mess that you created out of ignorance.
Absolutely. I'm not a big fan of all this legal Zoom and all these things you can buy, on the internet, these forms and all of that, because, the law is based on the facts and the law, and a boilerplate form does not take into account your facts. And so, I heard y'all mention on Rent is Due, you might have a lawyer in your box. So if you're an affiliate owner, you need to keep your eyes open for the lawyer who comes through. But if you don't have one, you're going to have some small business owners, successful small business owners in your box. And you need to go to them and say, I need to have a lawyer. I need somebody who's not going to gouge me, who I can get on the phone when I call, and start asking around, and get your lawyer before you get into a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get into the problem, you're going to take the first lawyer who half the time who answers your phone call. And that may not be the best lawyer for you for a variety of reasons. They may charge you too much. They may not really have the expertise in the area. You may never be able to get them on the phone again.
Mm-hmm.
So I would do it on the front end. So if you're in this situation, and let's just say, for example, your box, you have a good relationship with your landlord. Things are not terrible right now under the current circumstances, but let's say you didn't have a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
If you're that affiliate owner out there now, you need to go ahead and find one. Don't wait till a problem arises to try to start building a relationship with an attorney.
One of the things that I found most beneficial about that is having the attorney prevents me from feeling pressured to do things. Right. Which is in a lot of these scenarios, like people want money. I get out. I don't fault anybody for wanting money right now. I mean, that's everybody wants money. But a lawyer can say pretty authoritatively, like, you don't have to respond to that. Or like, I sent him a couple documents and he said, everything's good here. He's like, you need to line through paragraph 2, and then you need to make a slight edit to paragraph 5. And we just did that over the phone call. And he was like, I'm not even going to charge you for this, but that's what you need to do. And that gave me a lot of peace of mind. And quite frankly, like, put me in a different position with that landlord, because they were just like, okay, all right. But had I not done that in there, that could have put me in a bind later if something were to unfold that I wasn't aware of or like couldn't predict. So little things like that matter, that you just don't know out of ignorance, because I'm not a lawyer. I didn't go to law school. I don't know anything about commercial leases or how this could affect me down the road. I don't know any of that stuff because it's not my job. I know how to teach the air squat. That's why you need a lawyer.
Right. And, I get a lot of times, again, we're a little bit smaller market, 300,000 people in the area. I get a lot of times when I'm dealing with someone, well, my lawyer's going to call you. And then my first response is, great, have him call me. Well, about 70% of the time, that's a bluff. They don't have a lawyer.
Mm-hmm.
And you're exactly right. It puts you in a completely different negotiating posture to know that you have a lawyer, that you're not going to have to go spend 5 hours making multiple phone calls to find one, and then have to put down some sort of retainer or some sort of fronting of fees. You have that person who is there for you and with you. So on the front end, or if you don't have one, if you're listening and you don't have a lawyer right now, and we don't know what's coming up with the rest of this COVID, we have no idea. I mean, I was reading, I'm a fan of Morning Chalk Up. I like those guys. And I was reading one of it's a couple days old, but, the Chinese affiliate started to open back up. And after a few days,
shut them down.
Now, I'm hoping that doesn't happen in our country. I know there's going to be an uptick when things open up. But I think what I read in chalk up, I think Beijing was open for 3 days and they shut it back down again.
It's a clown show over there. I mean, that
Crazy.
shit.
So,
Yeah. The
so my point is, we don't know what's coming in the next 3-6 months. So this may not be the end of your legal issues with your landlord. We don't know what's going to happen next year during flu season.
Yep.
So I think you need to go ahead and get yourself ready now to address these issues in the future, even if you're having a good relationship with your landlord right now.
Something else to consider, and I'm not sure how much you've dealt with this. So I only got educated on this because one of my clients here, who's been a member for a long time, owns a ton of real estate in the downtown Norfolk area. He owns like the largest privately owned plot of land in downtown Norfolk. He owns a hotel, and he was explaining to me like how some of the landlord-lender relationships work. So a lot of people just assume that the landlord has a mortgage like I have a mortgage. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those cases, that's not actually correct, right? So my mortgage is with Wells Fargo, and they're just like, hey, we're just going to defer these to the end of the term of your mortgage, no interest included. Well, in a lot of instances, that's not how commercial real estate works. In a lot of instances, these loans are owned by large corporations, and in some instances, like by Chinese, right? So I know that for a fact. And in those scenarios, you're talking about companies who have loans that are owned by larger entities who would actually want nothing more than them to default on that loan because they can take it immediately. So right. some of these landlords are in a tight spot because they're like, hey, if we default on this, we lose all of it because that's how that contract is written. And the right. Chinese would basically just like nothing more than put this in bankruptcy and take it for pennies, or whoever owns it. But that's a scenario that some people have to consider, is like, who is that lender? It's typically not like, again, you can educate me more here, but commercial mortgages are not always the same as like residential mortgages.
Sure. And I think in the larger your market is, so in our area, the large markets are New Orleans, Dallas, mm-hmm. Houston, maybe Austin to some degree. The larger your markets are, the better chance of what you're describing to happen, because you'll either have what are called securitized loans, where the loans are only secured by real estate. People aren't on guarantees. A lot of times in those cases, the loan agreements are super, super specific. And they will say you cannot make a rent change or a rent concession without the lender's approval, because the lender underwrote that deal based on, here's the pro forma of what we're going to get on this rent. And then you have real estate trusts, REITs, who own certain things, and they're gonna have a say so over how the landlord responds. So the bigger your market, the more chance for that occurring. Around here where I am, for the most part, just one bank holds the mortgage. Mm-hmm. But it's the same in any negotiation or any battle or war. You need to know your opponent. Mm-hmm. You need to know what's going on the other side. You need to know, okay, like you were saying, like, you know that your owner owns the building outright with no mortgage, so he can do whatever he wants to do or can afford to do. Mm-hmm. So you've got to get your hands on around that, and know exactly, who and what you're dealing with.
Is there anything else that people should consider, right? So first and foremost, you should probably get a lawyer at this point, whether you think you need one or not. You probably will in the near future. So I know I referenced, I think it's the impossibility, impracticability kind of, and that's a defense, correct me if I'm not mistaken, that I could potentially use if I needed to.
Sure. Now, and that's interesting. You brought that up on rent is due. And today mm-hmm. I was having that very conversation with another client yesterday. The tenant is trying to use a paragraph in the lease about eminent domain and condemnation. Mm-hmm. And it says if the property is taken by a public or quasi-public entity for eminent domain or condemnation, and you cannot use the property, then the lease can be terminated. in that scenario, I told the tenant, I'm sorry, but you're wrong. That's not what COVID is not what that is for.
Yeah.
That's if that's for a governmental taking. Perfect example is the government
physically seize the property.
Right. Or the most typical example is they're going to widen a public road and they end up taking 3/4 of your parking lot.
Yeah.
Now you don't have parking and you can't meet code for parking.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that's a different scenario. So yeah, I mean, you would want to look for, clauses of impossibility. Now I will say this, 6 months ago, if you asked for a force majeure or impossibility clause, you probably would have gotten it from your landlord because they would have thought, it's not going to happen. Now it's going to be a little bit tougher, and it's going to be a pretty heavily negotiated matter because, again, this is the first time, this has happened in, pretty much the history of the United States, that's for sure. Nothing like this has happened even similar since the Great Depression. So, it's going to be on people's radar.
So on that note, so let's assume the landlord doesn't want to give you that for obvious reasons, but obviously you want to have it for safety's sake. Where would be the middle ground there? Because so typically what I've found when doing just a minimal amount of research here is that force majeure, it's very, it's vague in nature, right? And not only is it vague in nature as to what qualifies, but it's also vague or completely absent as to how is this executed in the event that this happens? Meaning, like, okay, if this, whatever, like if the government puts unreasonable restrictions or laws on, like, then you either have to pay rent or have to pay 50% rent, and then you would pay it over what time? Is that what people should be going with? Is something that kind of outlines, okay, if this happens, here's the protocol?
Absolutely. I think even though that may be difficult to hash through and write up, and it'll take some time for you guys to first agree on it, and then how are you going to write it where it's clear and it's enforceable. But I think that's the way that you're going to have to go in the future. That's the kind of thing I'm going to advise my clients on if tenants are asking for them. It may not be a force majeure clause. Maybe it's narrowed down to a governmental order or governmental closure clause. In other words, if the government issues an order saying that, I have to close, or maybe I have a supplier has to close,
Mm-hmm.
In that event, then we're going to do the following. We're going to, maybe waive 1 month of rent.
Mm-hmm.
My perfect example a minute ago, waive some rent, amortize some rent, and extend the lease. You may even have to write it up, though, that says, for every month that it's closed, we do this,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't know how long you're going to be closed, right? So it is going to be some guesswork, but it's definitely relevant for the future because this is going to happen again. And if it's not COVID, it's something else.
Yeah. And it's also, what if you know this going in? Well, the other thing I can do is I can now plan for it, right? Be like, okay, what do I need to have in place financially in the event that this happens? And this goes into my financial strategy that I work with my accountant on, and be like, hey, listen, in the event this happens, I need to be sitting on whatever, 2.5 times rent, because I'm going to have to pay that over time. And now what I've done is I've set that off to the side. And even though it may be amortized, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I've already had that set to the side, and now I just continue business as usual.
One of the other things that's coming up is what's typically considered utilities, common area maintenance, CAM charges.
Yep.
So insurance and taxes and utilities that are paid proportionately by the tenant, mm-hmm. those are not being deferred or waived by those entities for the landlord. So you can negotiate, okay, I can play with the rent, but my CAM and utilities are going to have to be paid. And that we had that same conversation yesterday with a client, and the landlord said, look, I can mess with this rent, but insurance is due, your share of the insurance is due, your share of the taxes are due, and your share of the utilities are due. And none of those entities are deferring or waiving any of
Yeah, I've actually heard of other people, and again, like, you should come to the table offering something. I don't think going to the table just be like, I need free stuff is a good plan. Like, you should go to the table with an offer that involves you giving something. I think
that.
you're far more likely to be successful that way than just being like, I need you to waive this rent. Like, that shouldn't be a thing. Anybody who had that thought, I just think it's dumb. Because I have had a rental property, and quite frankly, like, I've had to eat mortgage payments personally on rental properties because a tenant like either bailed or tenant went out. Like, nobody
Right.
wants to do that. It's not fun having been on both sides of that. And I have a tenant in that other space, and I told the tenant, I'm like, keep your money. I know you got your triple P money. Just hold it, put it off to the side until we figure out what's going on, right? Because I'm
Right.
subletting that space. So I think it's just communication. And if you need to get a lawyer involved, you need to get a lawyer involved. But you want to have a lawyer that you trust and understand and have a relationship with, and who understands your scenario, because now your billable hours, and correct me if I'm wrong, now my billable hours come way down because they're not spending all this time trying to figure out who the hell I am and what I do and what the specifics of my contract are. They
Right.
already know. And he can just say, outline this, take this out, change that, and just send it back. And then you should be good.
Exactly. And I think if you find somebody that you have a relationship with, you can tell them, I don't want you to bleed all over this thing. I just need you to give me the 4 or 5 most important points that I need to renegotiate. And when you have a relationship with somebody, that's why I came back to this market, because I grew up here. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of my clients are my friends and people I grew up with. And so we can have that conversation, and they can say, look, I don't want you to kill this thing. I just need you to look at it, tell me what's what, and let's move on down the road. And
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. That's how I operate my business. And you can find lawyers who will do that.
Oh, absolutely. It's not hard. So on that note, I think we've covered quite a bit, unless there's anything else you think we need to cover there, but I want to switch gears and talk about C Flag a little bit.
Okay. Okay.
Um, so give a little background on what this is and kind of how this kind of got started. Because my wife was mentioning last night, she's like, I think I've heard of this. And I kind of thought I had heard of it too, but I was like, no, I think that was just CrossFit doing in some representation for affiliates who were in legal battles over Rhabdo and stuff. I don't think C Flag was actually a thing yet.
Right. So, yeah, everybody knows that you have the RRG as
Yep.
insurance. The RRG is essentially a self-insured group for CrossFit. And yeah, that is your insurance. You can get insurance from a third party, or you can get it through RRG. I think RRG is incredible because it's run by CrossFit, and they understand that CrossFit in many ways can be a target, and they don't just run in like some insurance companies and settle cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always plug the RRG. I think it's a great thing. And it's the typical thing. You don't know how great it is until you need it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is not part of the RRG at all. So the way this kind of came up is I've been spending a lot of time in the CrossFit Health group because those 2 doctors, Tom Siskron and Ken Sanders with CrossFit Medicus One, are 2 of my very good friends. We're all in the same affiliate. We all train together. I'm fortunate enough to have 5 guys. I'm 51, so between the age of 49 and 54, we all train together. And so I've been spending quite a bit of time in the CrossFit Health space. I've been out to Santa Cruz a lot. Spent
That's cool.
good amount of time with Karin and Greg. And as I started to look at it, and it was funny because I would always be introduced to be all these doctors, and then this is Geoff, the lawyer, and all these
Everybody's
doctors.
like, oh.
So-and-so is this, he's a brain surgeon. He's a this, and here's the lawyer, the blood-sucking, shark over here. So, but I started kind of trying to think about, where does the legal profession fit in the bigger structure of CrossFit? And as I said, early on, I'm a big believer in CrossFit changing lives. I'm a big believer in the affiliate system. And so I was thinking about this, and then I got somebody referred to me who needed a legal question.
Mm-hmm.
My friend Alyssa she needed some legal help in
Okay.
Seattle. So
Okay.
here I am, a lawyer in Louisiana, and I'm talking to a box owner in Seattle. And I just wanted to help her. And so I helped her through this situation. And I really thought to myself, this is what we as lawyers should be doing for affiliates. And so I will say that the concept behind C-Flag was something that I pitched to Greg.
That's awesome.
Basically, through my relationship with him, I said, look, here's something I think we really need. I think of this as, what's going to help the CrossFit mission and the affiliate mission, and where are our weaknesses as an organization? Well, a weakness could be the affiliate who has no money to defend some sort of lawsuit that comes against them. A zoning issue that's going to shut down this affiliate, that's also going to set precedent across the country for similar lawsuits. Licensure on nutrition is a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
Cities and states going after CrossFit coaches and boxes for giving nutritional advice.
Mm-hmm.
You get one good decision in a major market, and all of a sudden everybody picks up on that and they start trying to do it other places. And so you could say that one of the weaknesses in the link could be the weak affiliate who just can't afford to fight that fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said to Greg, we need to create a network of lawyers who love CrossFit and are CrossFitters, just like we've created this network of doctors. Except what we'll do is a little bit different. My idea, and this is very much in the infancy stages. We've had some meetings on it, 4 or 5 meetings. We've gotten a lot done, but this is still in its infancy of where it's going to go and where it's going to branch out. Mm-hmm. But my initial idea was that we would create a resource, which would essentially be a website that would have lawyers in your state that are affiliate members and who are licensed lawyers in good standing, who are willing to put up pro bono work to help affiliates in that state. So let's just take Louisiana, for example. If I could get 5 CrossFit affiliate member lawyers who would put their hands up and say, yes, I will do some pro bono work for affiliates. And I could put that out to the affiliates in my state that if you have a problem, you need to call one of these guys first. Guys or gals, ladies first. Okay. In a very grassroots manner, it is mm-hmm. going to be up to the lawyer on what cases I take, mm-hmm. how much time I have to spend. There's no guarantee of my time. You're just going to have to talk to me and see if I can do it.
Yeah.
That's the concept of where it started. And that's kind of where we're moving to try to do this nationwide in the United States first.
I think it's important for affiliate owners to know not all law practices are these big law practices that you see in like New York, right? Like a lot of them would be considered small businesses. So I think, in my personal opinion, I think you should approach this the same way you approach your landlord. I don't think an affiliate should call with the expectation that you're going to get pro bono work. I think you should go to the table willing to pay people as best you can obviously within the resources that you have. But do those people a favor because they're doing stuff to help you, and offer just like you want people to pay you full price for your services at your affiliate. Like, offer the same professional courtesy to somebody who's going to probably get your ass out of a bind, quite frankly. Like, you're not generally dealing with a lawyer because things are going well. Like, right. So, no, but I think that's really cool. So is there currently anything where people can reach out to you or anybody else, or is this not available yet?
So right now we are mainly focusing on getting lawyers signed up.
Got it.
So if you are a lawyer and you are a member of an affiliate in good standing, we are interested in talking to you. My CFlag email is Geoff, Geoff, at cflag.law,
Okay.
cflag.law. You can email me. And what we are trying to do right now is amass that army of lawyers. We're trying to get the word out and starting to get them connected to us and to each other.
So if you're an affiliate owner, this is what I think you should do. I'll help you out with that here right now. If you're an affiliate owner, I think, because this is going to help you, I think you should send an email to your entire member base about this. Be like, hey, if you are practicing law right now, or you know somebody who is a lawyer who happens to be a CrossFitter, here's a resource. Reach out to this guy if you're interested, and then help them try to amass that. This is because if it's faster if the affiliate owners do it, because again, that's a personal handoff for that scenario. So if you're an affiliate owner, go ahead and send that email out to your clients, and then get in touch with Geoff, and then you can have those guys iron that stuff out. Sorry, my light went out. You can have them iron that out, and then go from there and start building this network of lawyers. And I would imagine it's going to be kind of like the directory that they just did for the MDs, correct? Is that the idea?
Correct. The idea is similar. So we're working with the folks in the IT department for CrossFit and for CrossFit Health, trying to capture all of the information on the front end. If I bring them a lawyer, I'm going to have the lawyer contact information, areas of specialty. And yes, I mean, in my mind, now granted, we've got a committee, what we're kind of calling the executive committee, of some lawyers who have stepped up, lawyers in-house, Marshall in-house, and some of the other lawyers who have done work for CrossFit. And we are kind of the exec committee, and we're kind of directing this thing, but it is still very new. And it is a grassroots movement in the sense that, we are going to kind of see how it evolves. But the idea would be, yes, that you could pull up the main site and, and we're not sure if it's going to be for everybody, or the affiliate owners only would have to have a login, and they would be able to pull it up and go to Louisiana or go to Texas, and it would show you where these lawyers are. And then you, just like you're doing on the, for the doctors, you click and there's the information.
Yep.
And so the idea is we want a number of lawyers in every state. Well, if you can imagine how many lawyers that is and how long that's going to take to amass, it's not going to be a very quick process. So we're working on that. So yeah, if you are an affiliate owner, we need the lawyer in your box. But they have to be an affiliate member of an affiliate in good standing. That's what we're looking for. And as we see some legal problems of affiliates along the way, if I have some people in certain areas that I can refer them to, then yes, absolutely, we will do that. But what you also have to realize is I have a full-time legal practice. I have a family. I have 2 children.
Don't be texting Geoff at night asking him to review your lease.
Yeah, I compete in CrossFit, so I'm trying to stay fit.
Is it going to be at LSU football games when college football resumes?
I do like to have a life, So right now I don't have a big team of administrators with me, but just bear with us. If you get in touch with us, you will hear back from us. And so right now the focus is to build the Army. And along the way, if we can help out affiliates as we move across, we will. But we're not quite there yet in terms of, okay, affiliates, now you have this massive resource. We have to build the resource first.
Well, it's just good to know that people are thinking about it. I mean, it's on everybody's mind right now. Everybody who didn't have a lawyer prior to this is scrambling, thinking like, should I get a lawyer? Should I talk to somebody? Like, I don't know what this lease says. I have no idea how to read a lease. I don't know what any of these words mean. So I think it's important. And I think it's important to have you come on to just kind of clear up anything that we didn't cover and rent is due, and then talk about some things for consideration. Because I think one of the important aspects of that is that you as a tenant do understand what is involved in being a landlord, what things they might be dealing with, what is a reasonable request and what is unreasonable, because that could be the difference between you getting what you need to survive and filing bankruptcy. So I think it's super important.
Right. And I think, I think as we move forward with C-Flag, that will be a resource. I mean, I think people have to realize that, you know, with all the kind of topsy-turvy things that have been going on with CrossFit, you know, at its core, you know, Greg still knows that the affiliate is the core of what we do. And this concept that we can help the affiliates with, whether it's all pro bono, partial pro bono, you know, that's where we want to go. We want to put this out there for the affiliates. And then in the future, you know, maybe not in 2020, maybe sometime in 2021, we might be to the point where when you need that, you know, we go to, in our affiliates, we go to our affiliate members for business all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I've got a dentist or a doctor or a lawyer or the guy who sells cars or paints cars, you know, we want to support our own, and that's what we're trying to do here. So through C-Flag, and so hopefully there will be that resource soon for the affiliate owner. But in the meantime, you really got to get smart and be penny wise and not pound foolish. And like I say, you can pay a lawyer a little bit on the front end, or you can pay them a lot on the back end. And it's always better to pay them a little bit on the front end and have that assurance that you got into this commercial lease without exposing yourself, you know, down the road.
Yeah, and the more complicated the lease gets, the more that becomes a necessity. You know, talking about like subleasing and all that stuff, like you have to have a lawyer review that stuff. Well, listen, brother, I really really appreciate your time. I think this was awesome. I really looking forward. And once you guys kind of get that up and running, we'll bring you back on and we'll talk about what that network looks like and all that stuff. Because because you know these issues aren't going away. They'll change in flavor. So people are going to need it. Anything else that people should know about either potentially contacting you, C-Flag, COVID issues, anything?
I just think you need to plan for the future for your affiliate in all legal matters. So your leases, you know, anything else that's coming up. I mean, if it's not, like I say, in my personal opinion, from SARS to H1N1 now to COVID, we've set this precedent of shutting things down and going to what I would term as some extremes or an extreme. And so
listen, don't even get me started on Virginia, man.
I'm with you. I heard about the militia thing. I love it. So I'm the same way. So, but when the next one of these comes around, we've set the precedent, and I'm hoping the freak out isn't as bad, but it could be as bad or worse.
Yeah.
So as you are operating your affiliate from a legal standpoint, from an accounting standpoint, I feel like you've got to look at this and see, can I survive another one of these?
Yeah.
And from a legal perspective, I think you need to have a lawyer that you can rely on now. Don't wait till times are bad to go find that lawyer.
Speaking of that, I got one last question, and if we can't dive into it, we can't. So one of the scenarios that I've heard on multiple occasions about this scenario, COVID specifically, is landlords basically using this time to renegotiate what I like almost unfairly, that like they would say, hey, I'll defer this rent, but you're going to sign an additional 3 to 5 years. If that were to come up, what would be just what should they consider? Like, is it go talk to a lawyer, or is that even legal? Or I don't know. Like, I've just heard that a lot, and I'm like, man, that's kind of jacked up.
I think in most states it probably is legal. I don't think it's ethical, not to the extent you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, if now what my clients are talking about doing is a month for month. If I give you a freebie on a month or 3 months, I'm going to put 1 or 3 months on the end of the lease.
Yeah, I'm totally down with that. That's reasonable.
But
I know of at least 2 people that have been basically told, I'm only doing this if you sign for an additional 36 to 60 months on the lease. Otherwise, you owe money.
Yeah, I think that's inequitable. Now, I will say that certain states like California have a lot stronger rent controls than Louisiana is a very free contracting state. So I've gotten used to that. There's not a lot of government controls on contracting, especially leases and especially commercial leases. But most states, I would imagine it's not illegal, but you would definitely want to push back on that. If you could afford a lawyer at that point, I think you would want one, because the lawyer would be able to impress upon the landlord how unfair that is. And that I think that's simply unfair. Now if I give you 3 months free rent, does that mean that if I want you to extend your lease by 6 months, is that unfair? Probably not. Maybe
Probably not.
But yeah, you're talking about multiple years on the end. I mean, that's putting, that's holding somebody over a barrel, in my opinion. And I would definitely push back on that.
Okay. That's what I thought. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't even sure what the legalities were with that. But anyway, thank you again, sir. Go Tigers. And we will definitely have you back on again at a later date. But thank you very much. This is awesome.
If any of this starts to evolve, we can do it again and talk about the next evolution of how we're dealing with it.
Yeah, well, let's hope not. However, I do want to talk to somebody about constitutional law in the state of Virginia, unfortunately, because of the nonsense that's going on here. But anyway, thanks again, brother. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jason. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Best Hour of Their Day. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. First of all, it's free. How cool is that? There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so it becomes super simple. Some of these episodes with Fern or Todd or myself chatting with one another, we've done right within the app itself. Anchor will make it easy to distribute your podcast to all platforms, Spotify, Apple, and many more. And you can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make an awesome podcast in one place. All you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. Come on, who doesn't have Spotify at this point? And if you were unaware, Spotify now is offering podcasts. That's right. On Spotify, you can listen to all your favorite artists, but also podcasts in one place for free. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including the one you're listening to right now, Best Hour of Their Day. On Spotify, you can follow your favorite podcasts so you never miss an episode. Premium users can even download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are, something I always do before I hop on a plane. And you can even easily share what you're listening to with your friends on Instagram and other social media platforms. Here's the deal. If you haven't done so already, be sure to download the Spotify app, search for Best Hour of Their Day on Spotify, or browse some other podcasts if you want. You can find them in your library tab. And also make sure to follow me so you never miss an episode of Best Hour of Their Day. Thanks again for listening to Best Hour of Their Day, and thanks again to our special guest. We appreciate all you guys do for us with Best Hour of Their Day when it comes to sharing our posts on Instagram, when it comes to subscribing to us on YouTube, when it comes to the constant feedback. We are grateful and we appreciate it. We are trying to build a community based on coaching development and becoming the best version of yourself. And it goes without saying that we couldn't do without all of you. So if you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Season 1 of Dropping In is out. We are getting tremendous feedback and we'd love for you to check it out. Leave us a comment on there. Head over to our Instagram. Give us a follow. Like our pictures. Feel free to share anything that resonates with you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or feedback for us, please don't hesitate. Email us, besthouroftheirday@gmail.com. Thanks again. Until the next episode, we hope you've had the best hour of your day.